I opened my inbox like any other morning, expecting mundane emails and bills. Instead, there it was, a video file from my aunt, innocuously titled Family Update. My stomach sank. As I played it, my own family filled the screen. My cousin rolled his eyes. My uncle smirked. And then, words I never imagined hearing from them, "She's a worthless burden. Who even lets her pay for this house?" I froze for a moment, the weight of betrayal heavy in the room. I had been covering the mortgage for years, quietly, without complaint. And here they were, mocking me, labeling me as though my financial support was some sort of crime. The camera lingered on them, oblivious to my presence, smug in their superiority. The humiliation wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was silent. Perfectly cutting. I closed the laptop calmly, masking the shock, and went about my day, observing, noting, calculating. Before I continue, I need to ask, have you ever been taken for granted by the people you supported the most? I'm Serena, and for years, I quietly paid my family's mortgage, keeping the house safe, the bills covered, and everything running smoothly. No one thanked me. No one noticed. They assumed it was my duty, and worse, they mocked me behind my back. But I didn't panic. I didn't lash out. I observed, I recorded, and I waited for the right moment. For as long as I could remember, my life revolved around keeping things running for my family. From paying bills to maintaining the house, I handled responsibilities silently, assuming it was simply expected of me. I didn't complain, didn't ask for recognition, and certainly didn't anticipate being labeled a worthless burden. I had a steady job, contributed a significant portion of my income toward the mortgage, and quietly ensured my family's financial stability. My evenings were often spent reviewing statements, reconciling accounts, and making sure that everything was in order, tasks I did without fanfare or acknowledgement. And yet, despite all I did, the moment my family discovered an opportunity to mock me, they jumped at it. The respect I had quietly earned wasn't enough. Their judgment was swift, harsh, and public, even if only in a private video shared behind my back. I started noticing the little things too, offhand remarks, subtle dismissals, and patronizing tones. While I had always been calm and composed, these moments were small warning signs that my efforts were neither valued nor understood. My contributions, which I assumed reflected my love and care, were interpreted as obligations I couldn't possibly refuse. Even in this environment, I remained composed. I understood that outwardly reacting to their disrespect would only confirm their assumptions. So I focused on what mattered, the facts, the documentation of my support, and my own calm observation. Every action I took, every bill I paid, and every silent correction I made was a building block for the inevitable reckoning. At first, the disrespect came in small doses, offhand remarks disguised as jokes, eye rolls during family conversations, and whispers that stopped the moment I entered the room. My cousin would smirk when I mentioned paying the mortgage. My aunt would mutter about how much I owed them in passing. No one else seemed to notice, or if they did, they dismissed it as harmless teasing. But I noticed. I always notice. Patterns reveal themselves when you pay attention. Even my daily kindnesses, helping with errands, covering unexpected bills, became points of ridicule. Comments like "she thinks she owns this place" or "why does she always pay for everything," drifted through the air, subtle yet cutting. The words were small, but the effect was cumulative. I began documenting things quietly. Each snide comment, each dismissive glance, every moment of subtle humiliation went into a private log. Not out of paranoia, but out of necessity. My mind was cataloging everything, preparing for a moment when patience and planning would turn these slight injuries into leverage. What made it worse was the contrast between public perception and private reality. To outsiders, I appeared calm, composed, and dutiful. No one would suspect that behind closed doors, I was the one being mocked, belittled, and taken for granted. My silence became both armor and tool, allowing me to observe without giving them the satisfaction of a reaction. I realized that these first warning signs, though small, were part of a larger pattern. My family had underestimated the depth of my restraint, the clarity of my observation, and the patience I was willing to maintain until the right moment. The subtle disrespect soon escalated. My aunt began sharing more videos, snippets of conversations where my family called me worthless and a burden, each one carefully framed to provoke outrage or pity from anyone who watched. My cousin laughed along in the background, clearly enjoying the spectacle. Every time I tried to speak up or clarify, I was dismissed. She's overreacting, they said. She's too sensitive. Even my own contributions, years of paying the mortgage, handling bills, and keeping the household running, were minimized, ridiculed, or ignored. Publicly, I was still the composed, helpful family member. Privately, the videos and whispered comments painted a very different picture. The dismissals stung, but they also sharpened my awareness. I began noticing patterns: who instigated the ridicule, who turned a blind eye, and how my silence amplified their arrogance. I stopped arguing. I stopped defending myself. Every dismissal became data, every mockery a record of their assumptions and entitlement. I understood something crucial: the louder they celebrated their perceived dominance, the more evidence they were giving me for the day when their judgment would no longer shield them. I observed, I noted, and I prepared. Patience was my weapon. Each dismissive comment, each shared video, each smirk or laugh at my expense, all of it was a puzzle piece I would later use to assemble a picture of accountability so undeniable that no one could ignore it. In their overconfidence, they never realized that my silence was strategic. The more they tried to belittle me, the more I learned. The more they assumed they had power over me, the clearer it became that one day, I would turn that power back on them, with precision, legality, and quiet force. The constant ridicule began to take a toll. Even with my meticulous documentation and calm demeanor, I couldn't ignore the emotional exhaustion that crept in. I questioned myself quietly. Had I really done enough? Was I somehow at fault for allowing them to belittle me so openly? No one outside the house saw this struggle. To the world, I was Serena, the reliable, composed family member, always in control. Inside, I navigated moments of self-doubt, fighting the urge to lash out, while maintaining the facade of normalcy. Gaslighting became routine. My aunt would say things like, "We never meant it that way," or, "You're imagining things, Serena. Why are you so dramatic?" Each denial of reality, each subtle minimization of my contributions, tried to make me question my own perception. But even amidst this, I held on to one constant: my clarity of mind. I could feel the exhaustion, but I refused to let it cloud judgment. I reminded myself that my patience and quiet observation were not signs of weakness, they were tools. Every time they tried to make me doubt myself, I responded internally with meticulous reasoning, cross-checking my records and noting the inconsistencies in their behavior. This period of isolation, while mentally taxing, became an essential phase of my preparation. I was learning to endure not for survival, but for strategy. Each insult, each dismissive glance, each whispered commentary became part of the blueprint that would eventually allow me to assert control and claim justice, legally, socially, and irrevocably. I wasn't broken. I was calculating. Every moment of doubt was countered by documentation, patience, and an unwavering resolve. My family saw only a calm exterior, but inside, I was mapping the path for their inevitable accountability. The breaking point seemed inevitable. The mortgage deadline approached again, and despite all my careful planning, I faced yet another humiliation. My aunt sent another video, this time edited to make me appear careless, irresponsible, and entitled. My cousin's laughter echoed in the background, punctuating every moment. I could feel the audience's judgment in their eyes. If anyone outside had seen it, they might have believed I was the problem, the so-called worthless burden my family called me. Even I had to admit, on the surface, it looked bad. The months of careful payments and silent effort vanished into the optics of a single, cruel video. My social circle, my friends, even distant relatives, who trusted my judgment and assumed my stability, now questioned my role in the household. "Are you sure she's handling things correctly?" someone asked. Another whispered, "She seems overbearing." I allowed the misperception to linger. Outwardly, I remained composed, continuing my daily routine and paying bills without comment. Inside, I cataloged everything. Every video, every taunt, every dismissive remark became evidence, a chain of undeniable patterns that my family would never see coming. This apparent loss was intentional in a way I hadn't anticipated. It strengthened my resolve. While the world saw failure, I saw clarity, the exact points where their arrogance, ignorance, and overconfidence would be exposed. Each insult, each slight, was a stepping stone toward the reckoning I had patiently prepared for. Even at my lowest, I knew one thing: appearances were deceiving. The humiliation was temporary, the mockery superficial. Beneath it all, I was quietly building a foundation that would turn every ounce of their arrogance against them, legally, socially, and irrevocably. Despite the public humiliation and private mockery, I refused to break. Every video my aunt shared, every whispered insult, every dismissive glance from my family became part of a growing pattern I quietly observed. I didn't argue, I didn't react. My composure was deliberate. Outwardly, I continued paying the mortgage, handling bills, and maintaining the household as if nothing had changed. Behind that calm, however, I catalogued each slight, each disrespectful comment, and each moment that exposed my family's entitlement. Isolation no longer felt like a burden, it became a lens through which I saw the truth. Their arrogance was consistent, predictable, and, crucially, unaware of the meticulous record I was keeping. Each act of mockery or dismissal only strengthened my resolve, showing me the exact points where their overconfidence could be leveraged. The quiet endurance was not passive. It was strategy. While my family assumed I was simply suffering in silence, I was preparing the foundation for an inevitable reversal of roles. The more they underestimated me, the clearer the path became. Patience became my shield, observation my weapon. I realized that the power in my hands wasn't in confrontation, but in restraint, timing, and the unshakable certainty that their reckoning would be both public and undeniable. I had become invisible in their eyes, but that invisibility was my advantage. Every sneer, every dismissive word, every moment of their laughter was documented, analyzed, and stored. I wasn't just enduring, I was orchestrating the moment when their sense of superiority would shatter entirely. Weeks of quiet observation revealed a clear pattern. Each time my family tried to belittle me, they followed the same steps, a whisper here, a smirk there, a shared video edited to provoke outrage or pity. My aunt and cousin, in particular, displayed a predictable rhythm, their arrogance always outpacing their caution. I began mapping every instance, connecting the dots between dismissive comments, public mockery, and behind-the-scenes manipulations. The sequence was almost mechanical, and the predictability gave me clarity. Their contempt wasn't random. It was rehearsed, consistent, and, crucially, unguarded. This understanding changed everything. No longer a passive victim, I could anticipate their moves, foresee their tactics, and prepare responses that would remain unseen until the decisive moment. Each slight, each comment, each video became a piece of evidence in a silent dossier only I controlled. Emotionally, I felt a subtle transformation. Confusion gave way to awareness, humiliation to strategic clarity. I stopped questioning my worth or doubting my judgment. The sense of injustice fueled precision rather than rage. I recognized that my power lay not in confrontation, but in patience, observation, and the careful accumulation of undeniable proof. By the end of this phase, I was no longer merely enduring, I was calculating. Every interaction with my family became a controlled exercise in collecting information, confirming patterns, and silently preparing for the moment when their arrogance and disrespect would meet consequences they couldn't ignore. I realized that the true advantage wasn't just documentation, it was timing. The moment of revelation, carefully orchestrated, would be unstoppable precisely because it would arrive when they least expected it. While my family reveled in their assumed superiority, they had no idea I was quietly building an unassailable advantage. Every shared video, every whispered insult, every dismissive glance became part of a carefully curated record. I stored screenshots, detailed logs, and financial records showing exactly how I had supported the household for years. I even traced patterns in their behavior, the way my aunt edited videos to amplify embarrassment, the timing of my cousin's laughter, the moments when each family member contributed to the narrative of my worthlessness. These details, invisible to them, were accumulating into an evidence-based framework. What they didn't see was that I had created a timeline that linked their mockery directly to their entitlement and negligence. Every financial contribution I had made was documented. Every attempt to discredit me was logged. My silence, which they interpreted as submission, was actually a strategic shield, protecting the revelation until the moment it would have maximum impact. I also identified key witnesses, people outside the immediate family who had witnessed their treatment of me or could validate my contributions. These allies, though unaware of my plan, would be crucial when the moment came to expose the truth. The beauty of this hidden advantage was that it remained invisible. My family assumed that I was simply enduring the insults, paying the bills, and remaining quiet. Little did they know, their arrogance was feeding the very mechanism that would eventually dismantle their perceived control. This phase wasn't just about endurance, it was about leverage. I had shifted from being the subject of their ridicule to becoming the orchestrator of an inevitable reckoning. Each small insult, each dismissive glance, each mocking comment became a calculated step toward the moment when justice, delivered calmly and irrefutably, would finally tip the scales in my favor. The more I observed, the clearer it became. My worth was independent of their perception. Serena, the calm, patient, and strategic woman they assumed powerless, was quietly transforming into someone unshakable. Humiliation no longer dictated my emotions, awareness and clarity guided my actions. I stopped seeking validation from my family. Their approval, their recognition, their fleeting judgment, none of it mattered anymore. The mockery and dismissive laughter that once cut deep now served only as confirmation of their predictable patterns and arrogance. Internally, I felt a sense of liberation. The weight of their contempt no longer burdened me, it fueled me. Every act of belittlement, every whisper, every smirk became a silent confirmation that my plan, my patience, and my restraint were on the right path. Confidence replaced doubt. Calm replaced anxiety. Where once I questioned my role, I now understood it with precision. I had been paying their mortgage, supporting the household, and enduring mockery not for recognition, but to secure the leverage that would one day bring undeniable justice. The transformation was subtle but profound. I wasn't plotting revenge out of anger, I was preparing for accountability. And in this newfound clarity, I realized that restraint, patience, and timing were my most powerful allies. No one could see the shift. Outwardly, I remained the same, composed, courteous, silently enduring. But inside, I was no longer the person who doubted herself or felt small. Serena was now a strategist, aware of her power, fully in control, and ready for the moment when the truth would speak louder than any insult. With clarity came action, but measured, deliberate action. I was no longer reacting, I was preparing. Each financial record, every shared video, every mocking comment became a component of a larger plan. My goal was not to confront my family prematurely, but to assemble an unassailable case that would expose their arrogance and entitlement without question. I reviewed every mortgage payment I had made, creating a comprehensive record that tracked each contribution over the years. I cross-referenced this with household expenses, shared responsibilities, and moments when my family had attempted to diminish my efforts. Every detail, no matter how small, became evidence. Simultaneously, I ensured that my own life remained impeccable. Work, social obligations, and daily responsibilities continued seamlessly. I maintained composure, projecting calm and normalcy, so no one would suspect that a reckoning was being carefully orchestrated behind the scenes. I also identified the perfect moment for impact. Timing would be everything. Too early, and their arrogance would shield them. Too late, and the moment would lose intensity. By observing their patterns, I could anticipate their actions and reveal the truth when it would hit hardest, visibly, publicly, and legally. Every interaction, every conversation, every opportunity for subtle exposure was mapped. I wasn't seeking revenge in the traditional sense, I was building leverage. I would let their own words, actions, and dismissive behavior be the instruments of accountability. Finally, I prepared for witnesses. Friends, colleagues, and distant family members who had observed the mockery or could attest to my contributions became silent allies. They would validate the truth when the time came. This strategic preparation was a quiet, internal process. Outwardly, I remained composed. Privately, I became meticulous, disciplined, and unshakable. The stage was being set for a reversal that would leave no room for denial. Patience, observation, and precision were now my tools. The groundwork was complete. The moment of truth, when their arrogance would meet undeniable evidence, was approaching. The day arrived when everything converged. The next mortgage deadline had passed, and my family assumed I would silently cover it once again, as I always had. The house was tense, laughter replaced by whispered anticipation. Though they didn't realize it, this was the stage where their arrogance would meet its reckoning. I entered the living room calmly, carrying the folder I had prepared. My aunt noticed first, her smirk fading slightly as she caught sight of the neatly organized documents. My cousin, usually eager to mock, hesitated mid-laugh. For the first time, their confidence wavered. Outwardly, I acted as if nothing had changed. I discussed daily tasks, checked bills, and made casual remarks about upcoming deadlines. But every word I spoke, every movement, was deliberate. I was reclaiming the space they had used to belittle me. Each step was a subtle assertion of authority, a silent declaration that I had been in control all along. The atmosphere shifted gradually. Their overconfidence, once a shield for their insults, became a vulnerability. By remaining composed, I forced them to confront the fact that the person they had mocked and dismissed for years was now fully aware of their behavior and ready to reveal it. Friends and distant family who had been silently observing began to notice the change in energy. What they saw was Serena, calm and composed, holding the documents that chronicled years of contributions and patterns of disrespect. The power had shifted without a single confrontation. The arena of humiliation, the living room, the space where their mockery had thrived, was now mine, and I held all the leverage. Their anticipation, once directed at me as a target, now hung heavily in the air, waiting for the next move that only I could make. Their overconfidence soon became their undoing. My aunt, sensing a subtle shift in control, tried to assert dominance, speaking louder, attempting to shame me again. My cousin chimed in, mocking my calm demeanor, certain that I had no ammunition to counter them. But this arrogance revealed everything. In their eagerness to belittle, they exposed details I had meticulously documented: incorrect claims about bills, exaggerations of my owed debts, and the timeline of payments I had quietly managed for years. Every misstep, every assumption, every word of mockery became proof of their entitlement. They didn't notice the subtle smile I suppressed as I leafed through the documents in front of them. I didn't need to argue or raise my voice. Their own actions, videos, comments, and dismissive behavior spoke louder than any confrontation could. I let them incriminate themselves, step by step, completely unaware of the trap they had walked into. Even my aunt's casual mentions of how much she owes us were now recorded, cross-referenced with financial statements, and ready to be presented. Each attempt to regain power only strengthened my leverage. Their arrogance ensured that when the truth was revealed, it would be undeniable. I remained composed, letting every overreach build the narrative that would leave them exposed. The more they tried to dominate, the more I controlled the story. They were playing a game, thinking they were winning, but in reality, they were handing me the keys to the moment of reckoning. By the time the documents were fully revealed, every boast, every insult, every attempt to belittle me had become irrefutable evidence. Their overconfidence had done the work for me. All I had to do was present the truth. I finally stood and placed the folder on the table, the stack of meticulously organized documents facing my family. The air was thick with tension. My aunt's smirk had vanished, replaced by a flicker of unease. My cousin's laughter died in his throat. The moment I had prepared for years had arrived. Without raising my voice, I began presenting the facts. Each mortgage payment I had made, each bill I had quietly covered, every contribution I had managed for years was documented, dated, and cross-referenced. I read aloud select excerpts from the videos they had shared, exposing their mocking remarks and dismissive attitudes. Each statement, each smirk captured in video, corroborated by my financial records, left no room for denial. The room grew silent. Friends and distant family, previously unaware of the private torment I endured, watched the unraveling with wide eyes. The dismissive laughter that had once defined the atmosphere was replaced by stunned silence. My aunt attempted to interrupt, to justify her behavior, but the evidence was irrefutable. My cousin opened his mouth, but I held up a hand. Every accusation, every insult, every moment they had assumed power over me was laid bare. Their mockery and entitlement now worked against them. And then, the moment of triumph, their expressions betrayed shock, disbelief, and humiliation. They had underestimated my restraint, my patience, and the thoroughness of my preparation. What they had intended as ongoing embarrassment had become their own undoing. I stepped back, letting the documents speak. I didn't need drama or raised voices. The truth, clear and undeniable, carried the weight of years of injustice corrected in a single, calm revelation. The arrogance and mockery that had been their shield now became the instrument of their public reckoning. In that living room, where they had long held me in contempt, power quietly shifted. I had turned the tables, not with confrontation, but with precision, patience, and undeniable proof. The verdict of truth was in my favor, and the mockery they had wielded for years had become the evidence of their downfall. The fallout was immediate. My aunt's smug composure crumbled, her voice trembling as she tried to defend herself. My cousin looked as if the ground had opened beneath him, realizing that every laugh, every insult, every attempt to belittle me had been documented and was now undeniable. Friends and extended family, who had been silent observers until now, began murmuring in shock. The pattern of mockery, entitlement, and disrespect was clear to everyone present. What had been invisible for years was now exposed in full view, and the arrogance that had empowered my family's cruelty became the very evidence that shattered their credibility. I did not gloat. I did not shout or insult. I let the facts speak, each document, each video, each timeline of payments and contributions doing the work. My calm, composed presence contrasted sharply with their panic and defensiveness, amplifying the impact of the revelation. The room, once their arena of mockery, became a stage of accountability. Their social standing, carefully maintained through years of dismissiveness and ridicule, began to falter. Colleagues, friends, and distant relatives who had long admired my composure now saw the truth of their behavior. The worthless burden narrative they had constructed collapsed under the weight of undeniable evidence. In a matter of minutes, the balance of power shifted completely. I remained composed, observing the reactions silently, knowing that their embarrassment and the public reckoning were irrevocable. The humiliation they had intended for me had rebounded, exposing them instead. The mockery, the sneers, and the dismissive attitudes that had once defined my family's behavior were now replaced by silence, reflection, and the unmistakable realization that I had been in control all along. The aftermath was quiet but unmistakable. My aunt and cousin, once so confident and dismissive, now faced the social and legal consequences of their behavior. The mortgage, once a source of my silent labor, was now acknowledged in full, with my contributions recognized by everyone involved. Extended family and friends reached out, apologetic and stunned, having witnessed the undeniable truth. Their perception of me shifted instantly, from the worthless burden my family had painted me as, to a composed, strategic, and capable woman who had endured years of mockery with dignity and patience. Even my immediate household adjusted. The arrogance and entitlement that had dominated daily interactions were replaced by respect, quiet acknowledgement, and a cautious awareness of my influence. My family learned that dismissiveness and mockery could no longer hide behind familiarity, actions had consequences, and power had quietly shifted. I continued my life as before, paying bills and managing responsibilities, but now with a different energy. Each interaction carried the weight of respect, and the lessons of patience, documentation, and strategic endurance had reshaped the dynamic completely. Justice had been achieved not with confrontation or anger, but through careful preparation, restraint, and the irrefutable truth. My family's perception of power and entitlement had been corrected, quietly and permanently. Looking back, I realized that endurance, patience, and clarity were my greatest allies. The humiliation, mockery, and dismissive behavior that once seemed unbearable became the very tools that allowed me to reclaim control and assert my worth. I learned that true power doesn't come from anger, confrontation, or dramatic displays. It comes from strategy, observation, and the quiet accumulation of undeniable truth. By remaining composed, documenting every slight, and preparing methodically, I transformed what seemed like weakness into unshakable strength. My family, who once labeled me worthless, now faced the consequences of their arrogance and entitlement. The social and legal recognition of my contributions restored not only justice but also my dignity. I continue my life with a sense of calm confidence, knowing that patience and intelligence can dismantle even the most deeply ingrained assumptions of superiority. Respect, once absent, is now a permanent fixture, and the lesson is clear. Silent strength and strategic endurance can achieve justice far more powerfully than any momentary retaliation. The past may have been filled with mockery, but the present, and the future, belongs to me.